Welcome back to the Politics Update. This is for August 2025. We've got a lot to talk about in this update. We've got some polling discussions to have, we've got some gun control updates, we've got some self-defense stuff we need to talk about again. We have general Canadian government news, and we have some conservative news. But before we get into the video, a quick message from this video's sponsor. Battle the elements, not the finish. Southern Shield Customs brings wildland firefighter tested toughness to your rifles and shotguns, ready for every hunt and every backcountry adventure. Save 15% at southernshieldcustoms.com and mention BATS888 when requesting your free quote. It's only a limited time, 1 month only, so don't wait. Links are in the description to both their Instagram and their website. Support a local Canadian business and get your rifle looking the way you want it to. So, back to the video. Jenny Byrne will not be the next elections campaign manager for the Conservative Party. This is something that has been mostly celebrated, with a few people being sad that she is gone. In general, the people that are sad that she is gone are Liberals or Conservatives who feel very loyal to her. In my opinion, this is long overdue. I don't think the Conservatives had a chance at winning the last election no matter what they did. However, that's not to say the Conservatives couldn't have gotten a better result. Now, I truly don't believe the Conservatives could ever have kept up their polling numbers that they had in late 2024. I don't think a majority government was ever possible for the Conservatives with Trump and with Carney and with everything that came about. It just was not going to happen. However, I do think a Conservative minority would have been on the cards, and I think Jenny Byrne's strategy, especially in the early days of the campaign, are the reason we didn't get that. Not the right messaging. Towards the end of the campaign, the messaging got better and more direct, and that probably saved the Conservatives a little bit. But if that messaging had occurred at the start of the campaign, or even more importantly to a lot of people, and to myself included, during Carney's leadership election, when we all knew there was going to be an election, if messaging had started then, things might be looking a little different right now. At least it is still a minority government for now, but this is welcome news for me, and I hope the next person that comes in can do a better job. Now, Pierre did have an election. The Battle River Crowfoot election happened this past month, and Pierre won handedly. The vote percentage is very slightly lower than what Damien Kurek got in the general election, but it is still more than enough to keep Pierre's seat safe for now. Quick reminder, Pierre is facing a leadership review by paying Conservative Party members in, I believe it's January or February, where we will see if he faces any challenge to his leadership. Based on the election result that we got, I do not think we're going to receive any challenge to Pierre's leadership. However, if the leadership review leaves Pierre with only 50 or 60% approval, that is when we could see Pierre step down, or we could see a major challenger to his position. I know it's a bit backwards for it to happen afterwards, but right now there's not a lot of push behind any person to take Pierre's job. And a lot of MPs know that now is the time they can get concessions out of him to shape the party they want without having to get a new leader. And that's it for the Conservative news. Now we will move into a quick polling discussion. This poll came out this past week. It is a poll showing the Conservatives in the lead for the first time since April. Now, I've seen a lot of Conservatives on X, on Discord or whatever, saying we're so back. But the reality is that this poll doesn't matter, just like every other poll that has been released this summer. From now on these politics videos, I'll be using Polywave. Polywave is a really, really great polling aggregator and projection and simulator website. And the most impressive part is that it's built by a 16-year-old. This kid is brilliant. He is very dedicated to this polling work, and I respect the hell out of him for it. He was actually the most accurate of anyone during the last election in terms of his simulation, which is very impressive, and now his simulator has gotten even better. His simulator is super deep. You can do general, so just the federal top numbers. You can do regional. You can even do sub-national, so you can have all of the major metropolitan areas, and you can go even lower than that. So this is incredibly impressive. Very good job to this young man. You have a bright future in this area. Oh, and not to mention some demographic values as well. This is absolutely incredible. But back to the polling discussion. This is the polling average since the last election. As you can see, the Liberals have taken a slight lead, the Conservatives have taken a slight dip, but there hasn't been much major change. Now, this is important. And the reason it's important is because this is known as the honeymoon phase. In general, in Canadian politics, Canadian voters will give whoever just got elected a chance. They might not like them, they might really like them, but they always give them a chance, and that is what the honeymoon phase is. It is very interesting to note that in the current federal map, the percentage differences have not dropped that low. Carney almost got a majority government, and yet the Conservatives are still within touching distance, which is not something you could say with Trudeau. As you can see, this is a gigantic gap. He reached over 50% in some polls. Now, this kind of backs up to my theory of people generally don't care with politics right now. I don't think any poll, no matter if it's showing Conservatives with a 20-point lead or a 20-point deficit, I don't think polls matter right now. The reason I say that is because, one, it's the summer. In general, Canadians do not pay attention to politics in the summer. Two, we haven't had a full parliamentary session since December of 2024. So yes, we had a parliamentary session, but it was not a full-length one. It was not a normal parliamentary session. Three, the opposition leader has not been in the House of Commons. And four, we have the honeymoon phase, which, as we discussed, Canadians give new leaders a chance, and because nothing is happening, there's nothing to change the honeymoon phase. So in my opinion, polling will not become actually worth paying attention to until after the fall session ends. Well, fall-winter session, after the Christmas break. The reason I say that is because we will have had a few months of Parliament being back in full force. We will have more Canadians paying attention to the news. The honeymoon phase will likely start to end simply because there's a lot going on right now, and Carney is going to face some of the brunt. We saw it with the Air Canada thing recently. The other reason I say after the Christmas break is because the NDP should be very close to their leadership election at that point, and we should know more about it after the Christmas break. But that's it for the polling discussion. I'm not going to talk about polls again until after the Christmas break. So now we move into some Canadian government news. Carney announced that Canada is removing all of our retaliatory tariffs that were not covered under CUSMA. Now, CUSMA, if you don't remember, is our free trade agreement with the United States, and Canada placed tariffs on goods that were already covered by CUSMA as a retaliatory measure. However, this was obviously not going to last because this is not a good idea. In fact, that's what Danielle Smith has been saying this entire time, and she took her victory lap. Now, there are still tariffs on Canadian goods from the US and on American goods from Canada on things not covered by CUSMA, but in general, right now, CUSMA is what is saving Canada, and what Carney is correct in saying is currently the best deal in the world with the US. Now, this might all change because CUSMA is set to be renegotiated under Trump's term. I believe it's in the next year or two, and we could be in for a world of hurt then. But for now, that's where things stand. Carney's elbows are firmly at his side and not up. Now, Carney also took a trip to Poland this past week to strengthen ties between Canada and Poland's ambassador was on CBC's Power and Politics, and I urge you to watch this clip. I can't play it, but I'll have it linked in the description. The Polish ambassador is literally holding in a belly laugh because of how stupid Canada is being. How Poland is buying Canadian oil and natural gas through the US because Canada refuses to sell it directly to Poland, and Canada is selling it to the US cheaper than the US is selling it to Poland. It's a sad but funny clip. I urge you to watch it if you have the time. Now, the CBC is going to court to fight the disclosure order for GEM subscriber numbers. This is absolutely pathetic. The CBC, in a move which is, I'm actually really surprised by, is going to court against the Information Commissioner to make their paid subscriber numbers available. Now, why would they do this? Well, they don't want people knowing how few Canadians are actually using this platform and how much money they are sucking out of the Canadian government. CBC needs monetary reforms and many other reforms desperately, but they're going to fight it tooth and nail the whole way. I don't know how they could possibly win this court case when they are a government entity and the Information Commissioner is requesting this. I don't know what they hope to do this, but they're wasting more taxpayer dollars, so That's great. And finally, we have this. This is tangentially related to the Canadian government in that it will have a major effect sometime over the next couple of years. In Quebec, there was a by-election in Arthabaska. This is a provincial by-election, so this is not a federal by-election, and it is a seat that was previously held by the CAQ, the current government of Quebec. Except this time, the party got 7.2%, a 44.54% drop from what they got in the last election. That is insane. The PQ is the one that picked up most of the pieces, with a little bit going to the Conservatives and Liberals. The PQ got 46.37%. Right now, it is looking very likely that the PQ will win a majority government. It is not guaranteed, not in any way, just like the Conservatives were not guaranteed a victory when they were polling super high. But unless something dramatic happens, and we've already been through Trump and that didn't change anything, we are going to get a PQ government in Quebec in the next couple of years. Now, what does that mean? That means we are going to get a Quebec independence referendum. And just like the last few times it happened, it's going to cause a little bit of chaos. Now, I don't think it's going to pass, but these referendums always stir up some very interesting feelings in the Canadian political landscape, and it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out this time. And finally, we move on to the self-defense and gun stuff. Now, if you want to watch a legal breakdown of self-defense law, go watch Ian Runkle. I am not a lawyer. I keep saying this. I'm not a lawyer. I am just giving my opinion on, in this case, how self-defense laws should be in Canada. This man was charged with assault in his own home after an intruder broke in with a weapon. Now, it is worth saying that even in the United States with self-defense laws and stand your ground laws and castle laws and all that, you can still be criminally charged if you acted in a way that is not self-defense. For example, if you execute someone, as in to the back of the head when they are unarmed and surrendered, or if they are running away outside your home and you shoot them in the back or something like that, that is not at all legal in any way. But in general, this news story has once again spawned the castle law and self-defense law in Canada argument. We talked about it a month or two ago about Doug Ford saying how we need castle laws, and this story is not going away. The more that these stories happen, the more we're going to see people pushing for castle laws. Now, what does Canada really need? Yes, Canada needs some reforms to our self-defense laws, for sure, 100%. Castle laws, stand your ground laws, that kind of thing. But the problem is, we don't have the tools to assert our means of self-defense. Yes, you can get a firearms license, but if you put on your firearms license that you want it for self-defense, you will get denied. That needs to change. We need to allow people to buy firearms for self-defense as a stated reason. Handguns, rifles, shotguns, everything. We also need some non-lethal options that are currently prohibited. Tasers and pepper spray are prohibited right now. How can we possibly enact the means of self-defense with even non-lethal weapons if we don't have access to them? It is so fundamentally broken, the Canadian system. I hope we see some changes. There is political movement for it. Pierre put out this tweet: your home, your family, your life. If someone breaks in, you deserve the right to defend your loved ones and your property, full stop. We've seen Doug Ford talk about this. We've seen a lot of discussions about how this is something that needs to change in Canada, but we're probably not going to see it, at least not until a Conservative government gets in place. And maybe even when a Conservative government gets in place, we're not going to see it, but this is something that we desperately need to see change, and I hope we do, but I'm not holding my breath for it. Now on to the gun stuff. Last month we talked about how Carney was undoing a lot of positions that Trudeau held. He's even now thinking of undoing the Online News Act, which is one of the most controversial things that Trudeau passed. He's ended a lot of things under his tenure so far, but one thing was the gun confiscation. It's going to cost billions of dollars when all is said and done, and it's not going to increase public safety an ounce. And we've had some higher profile writers in places like the Globe and Mail talk about how this is something that Carney should undo. Earlier this month, we had another one from the National Post. And then a few days later, we got this. Liberal gun buyback program will be completed within a year, says Public Safety Minister. Now, there's a very important quote at the bottom of this article, and that is this. This is something that we ran on in the election campaign, and it's a commitment that has been made by the Prime Minister. There was never any doubt that we would implement the program, but the questions were around the methodology and how we would deliver the program, which we're finalizing. We're getting to a point where we're very close, and hopefully starting in mid-September, we'll be able to roll it out, and ultimately we'll have this program completed within a year from its start date. Now, there are a few things in this quote that are very, very important to talk about. Number one, he says they want it complete within a year from the start date in mid-September. Well, that guarantees they're extending the amnesty. We all knew they would, but this is as close to confirmation as we have gotten so far. Number two, they are just working around the methodology of how they would deliver the program. Now, this is something that we've known for a while, and the reason that it's taken so long. And the reason it's taken so long is because they cannot find any partners to do this in any way that actually results in mass compliance. Of every gun that has been banned so far, they are saying there's only 140 or 150,000 guns banned, which is completely ludicrous. We talked about this last month. The real number is likely between 600,000 and 1 million guns that were banned. But the reason the government number is so low is because they're just extrapolating some basic data. They have 97,000, I believe it's AR-15s that are registered and that they know where they are. And then they're saying, yeah, but it's not that many more. We'll just say 150-ish and call it a day. And the reason they do that is because it keeps the cost down. They don't have to say it'll cost billions of dollars. They say it just costs hundreds of millions, but we all know it's going to cost billions. And the methodology to acquire those firearms is very difficult. From what I understand, from what we have heard, is that the plan goes as follows. There will be an RCMP email or document that is sent to us in some way. We will fill it out with all of our banned guns and tell the RCMP what we have. We will then go to a post office and pick up packaging. We are not actually going to be shipping anything through the post office. We will take that packaging, come home, put our stuff in it, and then take it to a depot of some kind where it will be confiscated. And we will likely not be paid at that moment. We will be paid at some later date. Because if you didn't know, most of the businesses that have been participating in the confiscation program actually haven't been paid yet. So payment is a big hurdle. In fact, there's a good chance we'll see some budgeting for the gun control platform in this next fall budget. Because if they are serious about this and that they are actually going to go forward with it, then there needs to be some budgeting. However, there's a catch. They know that at this point, I think they've accepted that they are not going to get mass compliance. People are not going to comply with this. Everyone who has registered something will comply because they literally have to, but anyone who has an unregistered, non-restricted firearm is not going to comply. And they know there's nothing they can really do about it because they can't send people door to door. It's just not feasible from a practical standpoint. So they're just going to let hundreds of thousands of Canadians become criminals. So that's the confiscation update. For now. The next confiscation update is likely going to have a few more hammered in details, maybe even a full plan. We'll have to wait and see. And finally, we have this, a very interesting FRT approval. Now, this is an FRT for the VSS in 762x39. Now, of course, it's not an actual VSS. It would say so otherwise. But this is a VSS clone in 762x39. Now, you'll notice one of them is prohibited. And the reason one of them is prohibited is because that is a suppressed, integrally suppressed weapon. And, of course, with suppressors banned in Canada, it doesn't matter where it's attached. It's prohibited. However, the one without the suppressor is a restricted firearm, which is very, very interesting. Now, are we going to see these being imported into Canada? Not anytime soon. As you can see, the country of manufacture is Russia, and there is currently a Russian arms embargo, so we can't import any Russian ammunition or firearms. So until that goes away, we couldn't import these directly, and there's a chance we could maybe get them if someone in China made them and then we imported them from China. But again, is it really worth it considering it's probably going to get banned? Probably not worth it. We'll have to wait and see how things go, but it would be really cool to have these in Canada. Even if they're not suppressed, we could have, linear compensators or faux suppressors or all that, and have them not be banned. These would be so awesome. So that is it for this video. Reminder, Southern Shield Customs, links are in the description. You get 15% off. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.